The straw that broke the camel's back. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more content. Hit the bell if you're a mad lad. So back in the day when I was a button pusher, CNC type machine operator, I worked for a company that had a supervisor, Scrooge. That was an enormous Scrooge. He didn't like spending money at all. He also didn't like money being wasted, which was even a bigger deal to him. He had several complaints on him due to this. Machines not running properly, didn't have the right buff wheels, broken tools but still worked, things of that nature. So I ran 6 EDM machines at a time. EDMs use brass wire. It was trouble enough staying stocked up on that. But I had this one notorious machine that loved to give me problems. Mainly the same problem. When feeding the wire using the machine function, it wouldn't feed properly. Doing it manually, it would work but the wire would break when the machine started running immediately. So you had to find a sweet spot in order to get it to work, and that could take a while. So clearly, the machine needed some work and have parts replaced. I submitted repair requests for a year, at least once a week after it wasn't getting fixed within a sufficient amount of time. Okay, so I was setting up a new job on this machine. This was out of a block of steel. I was near the end of the spool of wire. It wouldn't even get through the first pass before it ran out of wire. Running blocks of steel. The machines didn't like to go back to where it left off and restart. Also, on these blocks, run time for the first pass was upwards to 5-7 hours. So, to save time in the long run, I took that spool off, put it aside because I could use it for small and simple cut-off jobs in the future, and put a new spool on and go through the annoying wire feeding thing. Here comes Scrooge marching his way towards me to hand me some more jobs, and he notices the almost empty wire spool sitting there. Scrooge questions why I didn't finish that spool of wire. I explained to him that it wouldn't finish the first pass and time would be wasted in the middle of operation to switch out the wire and have to start the part from the beginning again. Scrooge says, No, put it back on now. Don't be wasteful. I tried to encourage that it would be best to have the new spool on and that I would use the near empty for future use. He didn't budge. So, I put it back on, and by the time I got the wire fed to where it didn't break, I had about 3 hours worth of wire left. So I replaced the spool again, and sure enough, about halfway through the first pass it ran out of wire. So I replaced the wire and restarted the machine from start. End of the day comes. I mark my downtime. I put 6 hours due to wire change, a reason I knew would catch upper management's eye. The next week, upper management, VP and president come marching out of their offices and head to my area. They don't look happy. I couldn't even get out a hello before they started going off. Why in the hell did a simple wire change take 6 GD hours, and further, why in the hell do you have a history of this on this machine? I had a smile on my face when I explained to them what had happened and mentioned that I also had repair requests in for at least a year. VP and president storm off, and not more than an hour later, Scrooge was being walked out of the company with a box of his things. I guess they were fed up with his shit as well as everyone else. Boss tried to be slick changing my employment, ended up having to pay me more than what he thought. Hope everyone reading this is safe and healthy. Now, to give some background for the story, I was working as a legal assistant at a small law firm but started off as the receptionist. This was a job I could get straight out of college while I give myself some time to adjust to adulting life and getting ready to apply to graduate law school. He fired a co-worker over her asking for a higher raise and immediately told me I was going to take over. The law firm has 8 employees and has a high turnover rate, and I didn't realize until a couple of months ago. My boss is a stereotypical boomer and gloats about how he was in the army, how he's a ladies' man, even though his wife is literally our office manager, and doesn't train his employees, even though he forces his employees to sign a contract saying they will have to pay $2,500 if they don't complete 1 year. Over the past months, he has tried to say my work is terrible, even though I used all of his templates and had to correct him with information I received from the court on how to do these exact family pleadings, and I have closed cases that have been with us for years in the span of 3 months. Blames me for being rude to clients, even though the clients told him it was not me and was another co-worker who he showed favoritism to, and consistently asks me if I found the right man. Would I be with that man after he met my girlfriend at the firm's annual holiday party? There's a lot more, but too much to write. Overall, he hated anything about me, and my co-workers would often have to vouch for me because he would take out his anger on me. Because of this, I made sure to always send emails of our conversations and clarify things in order to keep track of all the shortcomings and issues. I even had a meeting with my officer manager and documented the fact that I wasn't trained by sending a follow-up email and screenshotting an email where they made me train a new person 1 week after I started. Someone please tell me if this looks like adequate training. 3 weeks ago, he changed my contract to being a non-essential employee and told my co-worker, before she quit, that he lessened my hours because of my poor work and anything I did could be sent by mail or email. He often rushes through his work and leaves a lot of loopholes in his contract, so cue malicious compliance. The contract said that I would be a non-essential employee, and by the way he wrote it, he capped phone calls at 0.5 of an hour, but I would get paid $15 per call, $45 for each family packet I did, and $15 per email correspondence. So I did a couple of family pleading packets, but kept my co-workers in the loop, and they told my boss that they were busy with other things and asked if I could make the calls. They know I am the only one in my household working and felt the contract was terrible. I also asked them how they would read the contract, and they interpreted it in the same way I had. Since I was deemed non-essential and he could not be bothered to draft a letter letting me go into the office, I had to send various emails for him to print. When he would ask for me to place items on his desk, I referenced my contract stating I was a non-essential employee and could risk a fine, jail time. I ended up making so many calls, always tried to make them as long as possible by asking clients how are they and hearing them complain about what's going on and how difficult it will be for them to make payments at this time. That when I sent my hours to my office manager, she CC'd my boss and asked to verify hours and explain. I explained and broke it down with my contract. My boss couldn't be bothered to go back to his email and asked me to forward the contract. At that point, it took them forever to respond and I was eagerly awaiting their response. He attempts to spin it back and change the wording of my contract to say each call was only $0.75 and each correspondence was $1.50. This would essentially make my paycheck only less than $100, even though I had originally been paid $15 an hour and had worked 50+ hours in the past 2 weeks. At that point, I send my resignation and screenshots of all the times I asked how do they want the timesheet sent along with the governor's stay-at-home order for non-essential employees. He attempted to change the story to say that I was an essential employee and finally offered to give me a letter, but at that point, I had already sent my resignation. After reading my email referencing the contract, lack of training, and mentioning the conversation with his wife, he conceded, made an agreement that I was leaving on good terms, and is giving me the wages I deserve. Moral of the story: document everything and follow up. I have a second round interview, so please wish me luck. It's a hard time, but we'll get through it. Why don't you share with the whole class? Background: this is years ago from my first semester in community college. My senior year of high school, I was not allowed to take math because my mom pissed off the school counselors and school district. Seriously, the situation was dumb, but her yelling at people made it worse. This sucked because I love math and knew I wanted to major in engineering once I had a good enough GPA to transfer to university. As a result, my first semester I retook algebra so I could have a refresher before continuing to higher math. Story: due to a combination of my love of math and the fact that I had taken it before, I did well in my course with very little effort. Other students sought me out as a homework buddy, and I made a fun little group of friends. We sat together, did homework together, and shared notes. It was great, but the math teacher was old school in the worst way. This math teacher was like the most cartoon version of a math teacher ever. She wore long, black turtlenecks every day. Despite our November weather being hotter than most places in July, she also would only use chalk. The classroom had 4 whiteboards but only 1 chalkboard, meaning that she constantly had to erase her previous work. And while that was a little bit annoying, she was constantly shaking dust everywhere because every time she erased the board, she got chalk all over her black top. Her constant cloud of dust irritated everyone's allergies, which made her monotonous and confusing lessons even harder to pay attention to. Especially because she spent half the class getting dust off her shirt, and the other half calling out anyone who sneezed too loud for interrupting the lesson. Now, I know that while weird, This combination of behaviors was mostly just annoying, so we all just dealt with it until our group started working together on her class. Our group started working on homework and studying for tests together, which made us realize we had vastly different grades. I was pretty sure she hated me because she was constantly calling me out for talking. I try not to talk when teachers talk because I think it's rude, but I don't think it's rude to quietly share notes with my neighbor when she erases the board before I can finish taking notes. But despite constantly calling me out, she would give me full credit on a bunch of problems that she would mark my friends down for, despite having the same work and answers on the page. In particular, she seemed to hate my friend who I studied the most with, which I never understood. This girl was always punctual, polite, took notes, and worked hard to get a great GPA while working to put herself through college. Now my friend wasn't as good at math as me, but she was very smart and picked it up quickly when we studied together. She never copied my homework but would ask me or a tutor if she didn't understand until she understood the concept. But despite doing problems the same way as me and getting the same answer as me, the teacher docked a bunch of points saying she didn't show enough work. She would also pull this crap on other students, though less frequently. Even if they tried to talk to her and show her that every step was on the work submitted, she would still say it wasn't good enough. This kept happening until I got annoyed and started going up with my assignments and the other kids to show that we had the same steps and amount of work written down, but theirs was marked down and mine was fine. I'm pretty sure the only reason she didn't retaliate against me was because when she tried this on me at the beginning of the semester it didn't work. I always write every single step, know algebra well enough that she couldn't convince me that I missed a step, and refused to back down until she either gave me a real reason for losing points, which was impossible. I followed the syllabus and read the school's policies on homework, or she fixed it. In the end, she did fix it. For the rest of the semester, I made it my mission to protect the class. I constantly clarified directions. I checked people's homework and let them borrow mine if they got marked down. I would question and clear problems till she relented and accepted multiple answers. And I did this all with what my husband calls polite belligerent confusion. I wasn't out to punish the teacher. I cared and wanted to make sure that we understood her expectations. Basically, I was super invested and clearly cared, but also forced her to make clear and public requirements for every assignment, which super annoyed her, but she would look like a massive jerk if she acted annoyed. Every day, she had a printed attendance sheet that we were supposed to fill out to mark attendance. She was really picky with it, so if you walked in late but didn't want to walk in the front of the class during her lesson, she wouldn't let you sign in after class and marked you absent. About 4 weeks before the end of the semester, her printer broke, so she didn't have an attendance sheet. She said she would deal with it the following class. The printer was still broken. Now most teachers would either give us a free attendance or find a different way to do what they had been doing all semester. She instead decided that she would pass around notebook paper and ask us to write both dates if we were present for both classes. This would have been fine if she hadn't announced this 10 minutes before class started and before 50% of the class was in the room. This included me. About 15 minutes into the lesson, the paper finally made its way back to me. While my friend had made it early enough to know what to do, I was confused because only some of the kids wrote on it before passing it on. After she explained it to me, I decided to check with the next kids to get it to make sure they knew what to do before I handed off the paper. Initially I was trying to explain it to the next guy, figuring he could pass the message on, but instead the next 3 people were trying to listen and ask me questions. Halfway through the explanation, the next 2 people also started asking questions. At this point, to try and avoid interrupting the lesson as much as possible, I told the other 2 people that I would tell them in a minute, so I didn't have to whisper shout. So, I explained to my close neighbors, then moved next to the other people so I could explain it to them more covertly. 50% of the way through the second explanation, I heard that disapproving haha noise teachers make. She then attempted to shame me for talking during the lesson in the worst way possible. "Why don't you share with the whole class?" she asked. "Thank you, that would be great," I responded, maliciously complying with her request. I then stood up, raised my voice to address the whole class, and explained the attendance sheet for everyone. I finished by profusely thanking her for letting me speak, and I finished by apologizing for interrupting because I get confused easily and didn't want that to happen to anyone else. In the end, I took less than 1 minute of class time, guaranteed that all my peers got marked as present, and super pissed her off in a super respectful way. After that class, the school suddenly assigned a tutor to our class who attended every class. I'm not sure the tutor was there because the teacher complained or if more students complained. In the end, we were happier because we had someone who actually answered our questions after class, and I think the teacher was happy because she now didn't have to talk to us outside of class time. Stop making noise after 10 PM. Alrighty then. Sitting on the sofa, listening to some music with the window open on the first warm-ish day of spring, browsing through Reddit. A sudden realization hit me. I am reviving a gloriously mundane case of malicious compliance and can share it with you. So, story time. Some time ago, 4 years and change, to be precise, my best friend and I moved into a nice house with a cool inner garden and a tiny living room looking out into it. We, 20F at that point, weren't really into partying, but as most university students still had some friends who would come over 2-3 times a month in 2s or 3s to hang out, bake, drink some wine and chill. Nice times. Once the weather got warm enough, we would sit in the garden and talk, and here you'll just have to take my word that we were only talking once the clock hit 2200 hours, as that's when the official night hours start round here. So, no shouting, not even the quietest of music. No more than 4 people having a chill conversation in their own backyard. Working and studying, mind you, doesn't leave much time for such luxuries. So again, that's no more than twice a month. Across the fence, there lived a just no family. An older lady and her husband in one house and her daughter, toddler grandkids and 2 small obnoxious dogs barking all day every day in the next. Both sharing a garden bordering on ours. 2-meter high concrete wall between us and them. Additionally, we had never met them in person until they started showing up at 22:05 demanding that we go inside and close all windows so as not to be heard at all, because otherwise we are a great awful inconvenience. Super loud and in absolute breach of the rules. Not true, but the constant bickering, threats and calls to the landlord spoiled any enjoyment of the garden and summer evenings for us. The final straw was when the husband appeared at 22:02. So he had obviously been waiting to lecture us how we can be as loud as we want, but no later than 2200 hours, because in this community we have rules. Alrighty then. Cue malicious compliance. Both of us enjoy a wide variety of musical genres: jazz, blues, swing, classical, folk, the occasional pop rap track, you name it, and rock, and metal, abundantly. So, for the next 2 years, every evening with nice enough weather, the time from 2100 hours to 2200 hours became the neighborhood musical education hour. And at this point it ain't jazz either, and is as loud as we damn well please. We're having a blast, unwinding from the day, incorporating all cooking and showering into a goddamn dance routine. Then, all music stops at the strike of 2200 hours. Yes, we have an actual church with actual bells that ring even at that time of the night. And on, evening after evening, till the leaves start to fall and it gets too cold to blast some nice Rammstein or Pink Floyd or whatever through the huge ass living room window. They tried to complain to the landlord about it too, but at this point, he told them that they got exactly what they asked for and to piss right off. Only thing we hear from the other side of the fence nowadays is them screeching at their dogs. I swear to all the gods I don't believe in, if I hear that cookie sound once more they're getting Marilyn Manson for a week straight. And they lived happily ever after. The end. Edit. First of all, holy shit, I never expected this to blow up like that. Glad you folks find it amusing also. Thanks for the award. And thanks for the heaps of new music to fill my isolation days. That's beyond awesome. Last but not least, thanks for sharing your own neighbor related and musical MCs. That's some cool stuff right there. Now, to answer a couple of the questions that have popped up repeatedly, and I promise to try and answer everything else as well. Yup, Southwest Germany it is. I never went over to the Karens, although I could have complained right back at them as you suggested, and that's for one reason. I would much rather end a tiring day on an upbeat note than with a pointless and frustrating argument. There was lots of different music, but don't imagine only metal, playing Welcome to the Jungle while the parents tried to herd the whole pack of kids and dogs inside was a singular treat. For one, the Manson comment was a real-time reaction to one of them shouting after the dog while I was writing this, at around 21:30, so it's still in the cards for them. Having said that, I do have a lot more understanding for all types of frustration now that we are stuck at home. The music was not window-rattlingly loud. I mean, I also have ears and I'm not about to, metaphorically, burn my house down in order to watch their barn burn. The usual volume of music in my home can have a normal conversation with it as background. The MC volume is somewhat around. I'd have to raise my voice a bit to have a conversation, but just a bit. Neither the other neighbors nor the landlord nor his 90-year-old mother, below, had a problem with it. The house of the Karen neighbors is 2 gardens away from ours. Basically, if they went inside and closed the windows, they wouldn't hear a peep. This only happens in the warmer months though, so everyone wants to enjoy the nice evenings outside. And given that they get annoyed at speaking, it is sure to bug them. The kids were toddlers when we first moved in. The music thingy started after 2.5 years of them nagging, so by the time they were 6ish and allowed to play in the garden even after 22 in the summer, it's not even dark out by that time anyway, so the music wasn't really messing with their sleep schedule. Also, still haven't heard them bopping along, sadly, if all goes according to plan academically. However, I'll hang around some more, enough time to see them into their prepubescent years, so there's some hope left. Other neighbors in the house, above us, lives the landlord's mother, an ancient lady of short temper, who could talk to her kid and have us out in no time if she felt we were being a pain in the ass. Right when we moved in, we asked her whether we should be quiet by a particular time and she answered, "Well, I take my hearing aids out at 2000 hours, so do whatever, it won't bother me." The Karens went to her on multiple occasions to complain about us, and she gave them the same answer until they gave up. On the other side of the house there's a taller building, 2-story, with no garden and no windows into our garden. So from our point of view, a 2-story wall. On top of that wall, there's a rooftop garden terrace. Those neighbors stay up there till late at night, and although I can hear them, they also keep it to just conversations, so it doesn't bother me. We receive packages for each other, so we have all had plenty of opportunities to complain had the noise been a problem. I know for a fact, however, that the Karens have called my landlord to complain about after-hour talking at times when none was home at my place. So I guess a conversation 2 houses over is still loud for that family. Looks like you reached the end of the video. Like and subscribe to receive absolutely nothing for absolutely free.